Episode number 89 of People I Know Show. Kurt Carstensen, joined today by Amanda Koonjbeharry. Welcome to the podcast, Amanda. It's been a little while since I've seen you.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. Thank you for having me. It has been a while, but excited to be here. So,
as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking this is a perfect opportunity, and you're a good guest to help me wrap up 2020, which has been, I don't know, maybe the most unusual year of our lifetimes, and set us into 2021.
Yeah.
But before I get into
definitely,
I would like to familiarize myself a bit more, because I really haven't chatted with you in a while about your background, but also the audience on who are you and what are your motivations. I know you do some incredible work, and I want to hear about some of that currently with the Citizens League and other jobs before that. But what motivates you in life, Amanda, just generally when you think about yourself?
Yeah, good question. And I hope my audio and stuff doesn't have any issues here. So what motivates me? Gosh, that's a good question. It's a loaded question, I would say, but one that I think is appropriate for us to start at. So as you said, as you introduced me beautifully, Amanda Koonjbeharry. So I like to go back when I think about this question to just kind of my childhood, growing up, and why those things kind of impact how I move in the world and the work that I do. So I was born and raised here in Minnesota. My family's from Guyana, South America. They immigrated here in the early 80s. And so I'm a first generation person to be born in the US. That's really impactful to me because I'm constantly finding myself straddling between multiple cultures and identities, and it kind of influences how I, again, show up in the world and how I see things and approach issues or approach the work that I'm doing. Grew up in Prior Lake, and Prior Lake, if folks aren't familiar with my story, so Prior Lake, when I was growing up there, was pretty racist. And I think the first time we actually connected, we talked a little bit about this. Mm-hmm. It was just such an impactful experience in the most negative way, I would say. But the experiences I had in that school just really fueled my desire to strive to fight for racial justice. And so that's something, just my experience of racism, of experiencing that bias and prejudice, is a motivation for me to make sure that other people don't have those experiences like I did. And so that's one big thing. And feel free to jump in. I don't know if you want to ask any questions. I feel like you do, but I don't know for sure.
My whole life is figuring out, do I interrupt someone and ask the new thing that comes to my mind after the other question, or do I just have an opportunity to express themselves? I hear about that. I think, what is racism in Prior Lake? What do you mean by that? Because I don't know that everyone's definition, and this is maybe the problem, everyone's definition of racism isn't the same. So is this with the faculty and the teachers? Is this with other students? Give me an example of maybe one of the more racist experiences that you felt, if it was an experience, or maybe it's an overall day-to-day, everyday, everything. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm so glad you asked that question, because I think, as we're thinking about 2020, as we're thinking about so many things that have happened, the murder of George Floyd and the uprising, and, this heightened focus on racial equity and just these terms that we keep hearing, I really appreciate you asking, what did that look like for you? And I have a lot of examples, so I could take this entire podcast hour to talk about it, unfortunately, but I won't. And I think my clearest example, for me at least, for me, this is a straight example of just the way that institutions continue to push and promote systems of inequity and racism. And so when I was in school, in high school in particular, I remember that people that I went to school with in my grade and in other grades, they would come to school with Confederate flags on their shirts and their hats, and then they'd have them on their tailgates on their pickup trucks. And And I remember being in class and I was talking to a friend and we were like, is that actually a Confederate flag? Like, I didn't even know, I was young and I didn't even know all of the history behind that flag and like everything that kind of it stands for in many ways. But for me, even as a brown young person in that school, I was super uncomfortable. And I knew that that flag represented something like in the context of being in Minnesota, it just didn't make sense, right? And it was representing something that was against like, it made me feel like, somebody that's wearing that doesn't support somebody that looks like me in my brown skin. And I just remember feeling like this is crazy. And none of the teachers were saying anything. Nobody was saying anything. And so me and another friend confronted somebody about it. We went down to the like principal's office. And granted, these are like vague memories because this was a very long time ago. But I remember this person just saying that how he has family in the South and this, that, and the other thing. And I don't know what the outcome was, to be honest. I was just so shocked that this was allowed to happen. And what was like just so, wrong to me in that situation was I was super uncomfortable. Like that message, that imagery to me, and not just me, I mean, this is like a historical thing, represents something so just not inclusive, right? Just so kind of negative in many ways. And that I had to deal with that discomfort, that nobody came, nobody on the faculty, nobody in the administration said anything and stood up for the other like Black and brown and Native kids that were in that school and said that, this shouldn't be allowed on property. And I just felt like if I walked in there with like some gang paraphernalia, I would have been like kicked out of that school, because it's considered hate speech. And so it was just moments like that. And I have so many other moments of like real blatant racism that I witnessed and that I encountered myself. But I think that for me is the example of how an institution itself and the people within it really uphold these, whether it's imageries or, historical things of racism, and that they continue to allow those things to be normalized in many ways.
And I think there's at least two levels to this, and maybe you can elaborate just a bit further. So the symbolism certainly has historical meaning, and everyone can receive that differently when you see something like that, what it means today, what it meant to them. And I wonder, sometimes I think people attach themselves to symbols for some reason that they is maybe kind of pure and honest and has nothing negative behind it, but yet they've aligned themselves with something that, they don't recognize how that affects someone else. So these same people that were using symbolism that you thought was racist and felt was racist, were they directly also, did they treat you differently than other people? Did you recognize that as well, or treat others around you like that?
Yeah, certainly. So there was definitely a parallel between the folks who were, having that symbolism on their, clothing or on their pickup trucks that were then being directly racist to other people, like using words towards people that are really straight up racist, offensive. So there was definitely that direct connection. And so for me, I mean, again, that's where for me, like that, the reasoning that this person had around having family from the South, for me, that wasn't a justification, because the people they were around, the things that they were doing was really, it was racist. Like you calling people certain names and saying really messed up things, like that wasn't any justification to me. Yeah.
So let's get back into your story of what motivates you. And that's an example, maybe going to the principal's office or whatever you did that day to start to try to take some actions that can make a difference.
Yeah.
What else about you and your background has led you up to current day? And we can get into that some more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I bring that up because I think it's a really good just kind of example of when I see something that I feel like is unjust or unfair, that I feel some type of motivation and duty to like say something and do something about it. because of those experiences where I personally experienced that and have seen the ways that, like, again, folks that are supposed to be there to support you aren't really showing up. And so that happened. I think I realized from a really young age that I wanted to serve my community. And so my family, I think every person experiences some level of trauma or traumatic experiences that they go through in their life. And so my family, myself, no different than most people's experiences. But we, have gone through our own kind of share of trauma, things that I definitely don't want to, haven't shared totally publicly, but there were certain things that have happened in my life where I just realized that I really want to serve people. And I don't want folks to go through some of the same experiences I've had. One thing that I do share more publicly, because I do want to talk more about this and break the stigma down. So I am a survivor of domestic violence and was in a really abusive relationship for a decent amount of time, actually, during my young years as a teenager and into my early 20s. And so that's an issue. So again, I really pull from my own lived experiences of the things I've gone through. And I think for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I feel just this deep like fire inside of me. Again, when I see other people going through the same things or experiencing that type of pain or suffering, that I just can't sit on the sideline and watch, that I feel a need to do something about it. And so that's a huge driving force for me. And it's kind of been the theme in my life, playing out in different ways.
I don't know how long you've been public about your story of the domestic violence you experienced, and obviously, I'm happy. It seems like you're finding good ways to take that experience and put it back into the world positively. Is that something,
Yeah.
once you shared it publicly, is that something that changed something about that you felt differently about it or about you once you put it out there and allowed yourself that vulnerability?
Yeah, I love this question. I would say for me, yes. And I think, if you have folks who identify as survivors or have been through similar experiences watching this show, I just think it's important to say, like, that is a journey that everybody has to decide for themselves. And there is no, you don't have to do that, right? You don't have to share your story publicly. It's totally a decision that you get to make. For me, the first time I shared my story more publicly was in 2016. I was on the board of Domestic Abuse Project, and I was doing the fundraising pitch for that organization at their annual kind of luncheon. And I shared part of my story, and I just remember like how overwhelming that felt. I hadn't really shared with my family. I hadn't really shared with a lot of people. I would do it more one-to-one when it made sense for me. But that was the first time I really did it in front of an audience of like hundreds of people. And it felt really isolating afterwards. It brought up a lot of emotions, even though it had been years later. And so I say that because I want people to know that, like, when you make that decision, there are so many things that can come along with it that you don't even expect. And so make sure that you have a really good support system in place and people that are there for you that you trust, and that can just sit with you in that moment, because you don't know how your body and how your heart is going to react. And I would say now, an article came out more recently through the Women's Press with my story. I think it was about a month and a half ago, maybe. Time is just like obsolete at this point. But so it came out not that long ago, and I definitely had anxiety about it. I've shared my story prior to this article coming out, but this was the first time I've shared it so broadly, and especially within my own community of like the Guyanese West Indian community. And we're a pretty small community, so people talk, people kind of know your business and know parts of your story. But for me, it was really important that I was putting it out there more broadly, and with my community too, because there's so much shame and stigma, especially of the person that has experienced the violence. And I want to make sure that people don't feel that anymore, that they know that they're not alone. And so this time it felt actually really empowering for me to be able to do that, and to really craft the narrative of my own experience for myself and not have other people write that for me, but for me to do it. And I feel like I have done a lot to take care of myself, my mental health, and really make sure that I'm healing from those experiences too. And so I feel like I'm in a place where it's very empowering now to be able to say that it doesn't, the things that have happened to me don't have that power over me anymore.
That's really great. And I think so much of what I've learned doing this podcast is really any little thing that I felt maybe not wanting to share. And there's great levels of things that are very personal and things that are probably easy to share, but through the podcast and having given some other people opportunity as well to share stories, I really find that so much more good than bad comes from that when you finally break out into maybe a public space to talk about something that, yeah, there's an adjustment there. But once you work through that, you're in such a better position to do more with what's happened to you when we've held it in tight and feel like you can't tell anybody. So it's great to hear that over the last few years, you've been able to make some progress in that way. So please share if there's a little more to your background story that you want, but also leading into what some of the things that you have done and you worked on and people you've worked with, that kind of connects us all of what's motivated you and some of the work that you've done over the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. So when I think about my work and kind of the connection points of how I have ended up where I'm at today, one job that I think is really important for me to highlight, I used to work as an employment counselor with an organization that's now called Avivo. And I used to do employment counseling for this organization. And that was probably one of the most impactful experiences that I've had. Again, I think we all have experienced our own things that we bring with us to, spaces and work that we do. This was the first time though that I was working with not just individuals, but with their families and really getting to know children, their parents, and just understand people and their circumstances beyond like a case number, right? And I think it's so easy sometimes when you're in these types of positions or you're supporting, you're running programs related to like Minnesota's welfare program, which is what that was, to really dehumanize people. It's easy, I think, for some people to do that because they're not sitting directly with and working with families. And so I had the opportunity and the privilege of working with families, of hearing their stories, and seeing like how connected we really were to each other. And I bring that up because I had decided I wanted to go into social work. That's really kind of my heart calling work of wanting to serve my community. And while I was in that role, I really saw that public policy is so important too. And, I would get frustrated like working with families, and one week we would have all this funding, all these resources, and then the next week it was gone, or there was some kind of issue around it or more regulations. And I decided that I want to be able to not just like do this work and advocate and work with people directly, which really does fuel me, but I want to be able to advocate for folks on this macro level and really change systems and the way that policymakers are understanding the impact of the things that they are doing, and really start to humanize the receiver of the policies that they're crafting and creating, right? And to really understand people's experiences. And do you have, I feel like I can always tell. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Very easy to
jump in anytime.
Thoughts just start circulating in my mind. Well, as you're doing this, and I wonder, and God, I wish everyone had that experience. And I feel like I come across people and learn their stories fairly often. And that's helped me become who I am and how I see the world today. But I do think so many people, they hear just a couple details about someone's life and immediately judge whatever they want to judge them for.
Totally.
And don't give consideration that some people, many people, maybe most people that are in tough situations really have had a difficult shake in life, or opportunities have not been there.
Yeah.
And at some point, if there are to get ahead, so to speak, we need to help them more than we help other people, I suppose. And
Yeah, definitely.
so many people out there, and I think the previous version of myself wouldn't have thought that way. And I just wish we could get that message through to those that don't see it that way.
Yeah. I agree. And yeah, I don't know what I think for me personally, because I can only speak about my own experience, but it is really my experiences in life that allow me to like push myself to be more compassionate, to take a minute instead of like, I think it's so easy to judge. I think it takes more time and it takes more patience and it takes more grace to not, right? And it takes more work on us as individuals to ask those questions like, wait, what is going on with this person? What has happened to them? How can I be of service, right? Like, how can I start to understand their story instead of judging them by what I'm seeing, these one or two things, right? So I totally agree. I wish that we all had more of that, and more patience to dig into that and to really dig into why we kind of jump to those assumptions right away, or those judgments. But so that job, it was just a really profound experience, and I worked with some amazing, amazing people, and again, just saw the ways like that the housing systems, systems to support survivors of domestic violence and other systems that were in place to serve people weren't really that helpful sometimes. And that kind of made me want to go into public policy. So I kind of jumped around quite a bit during grad school and eventually found my way at Hennepin County, where I had a chance to do a couple of different roles there. But I think the most impactful role that I had was the director of their anti-sex trafficking program. And during that time, I had a chance to co-lead the anti-trafficking committee for Super Bowl 52, which was a really huge endeavor that a lot of people were a part of, and really made it, I think, as kind of well ran and well executed as it could be during that time. And then, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But from there, I mean, that work really changed me, I would say, in so many different ways. I don't know that you can do that kind of work and work with, survivors and folks who've been through such egregious situations and not be changed by that. But after that work, I just realized that I was ready to kind of hand over that initiative. And I think it needed somebody new to come in and bring new ideas, bring new leadership, and really grow it to the next level. And then I knew I wanted to look at like, how can my impact be greater than just one county? And I'm a learner. I like to, like you, I like to ask questions. I like to learn and challenge myself. And so then, at the Citizens League, I get to do exactly that. And so I'm learning about things that I never would have ever thought I'd be doing or talking about. And it's just been really fun and exciting to do that. So
let's go back to the sex trafficking and your work with that. To me, this is one of those topics, and I think there's probably many topics where there's two worlds. There's people that just are oblivious to what's going on, and I feel like I'm a part of that group with this topic. Even though I've seen statistics, I've heard stories, I just think somehow my life doesn't cross paths with the people that whose lives are really in many ways destroyed by that, or are really harmed. What can you share about whether it's statistics or some personal experiences with people you've come across that helps to really paint a picture of what's going on out there? And maybe it relates to the Super Bowl week or not, because I'm sure that was a whole different monster with so many people traveling in. But what can you share on that topic a little further?
yeah, definitely. And it's been a minute, obviously, since I've been kind of in that world, but still pretty connected to folks who are on the ground. I think the biggest thing is that I want people to know, and that I think so many folks working in that anti-human trafficking space hopefully want people to know, is that it's, I think the movies you see out there, like Taken and other movies, that's not usually what we were seeing. We were seeing a lot of like local youth being exploited or being trafficked. And it's not like that's happening to somebody other, like that you never are crossing paths with. Like, it is happening more often than people realize. And I just think it's important to know that it's happening because folks are experiencing poverty. It could be happening because, let's say, somebody's coming out to their family and talking about their gender identity, and they're not accepted anymore. And so then they're, unsheltered, they're experiencing homelessness, and somebody offers to trade them sex for a place to stay. Like, that is exploitation. So it's happening in so many different ways that I think people don't think about. And I think the other big thing is realizing that this issue isn't happening in silo, right? Like that example that I brought up of, somebody who's LGBTQ, coming out and being, disowned almost from their family. Like, that's connected to so many things. That's then connected to housing. That's, it's connected to income inequality and livable wages. It's connected to so many other things. And so I just think when we look at the roots of why, exploitation or trafficking is happening, we have to look at some of those systemic issues too, and address those things as well. Whether that's education and healthcare, and again, access to livable wages, things like that.
And I think that topic, if someone's experiencing that it has to be one of the more shameful things that someone could go through. And there are people that perhaps there's way more people than I realize that I know and I come across that are experiencing that, but it's not something people are probably going to talk about very easily or very often with very many people. So it stays in silence, I'd imagine, more than maybe a lot of other things that people are experiencing that are really putting them in a difficult space.
Yeah, definitely. Doing that work, I've never encountered somebody that said that I even identified with the words like, yeah, I'm a victim of sex trafficking or survivor of sex trafficking or sexual exploitation. And I think there is so much stigma and probably shame around it. I think there are parallels of that experience to that, the shame and stigma that people feel around domestic violence and around sexual violence. And people experience those things in the experience of exploitation and trafficking also, right? Not always, but that's a possibility. And so, yeah, I think there's so much of that. And one thing too, I think we see the shame and stigma come out when we think about like, criminal records that people have. So my work was mostly focused on youth under 18, but I did kind of venture into looking at folks who are over 18, and individuals are, it's not happening as much anymore, but folks are being charged with like prostitution related offenses, and having something like that on your record and having a landlord see that, or an employer, and the level of shame or a level of stigma around that, and then like discrimination around that, again, it continues a cycle of like preventing people from getting adequate housing, adequate employment. And so have been efforts to try to, mitigate that and to support people in getting expungements and so many other things so that they can really, move forward in their lives and secure their basic needs, really.
It seems like a topic that, again, if people are getting just a little bit of information and then making a judgment, going to judge unfairly so frequently, and
Totally.
that really puts someone in a difficult situation if that's a part of their history.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Let's take just maybe a few more minutes for you to, I guess, bring some attention to some work you're doing now or some of your colleagues are doing. And if someone wants to get to know more about Citizens League or anything else that you're involved in, you can put that in there, and then we'll try to clear space to just get a grasp of what we just went through in 2020 and look ahead. But what else is going on right now with you and the work that you and your colleagues have been doing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much. And I'm always happy to talk more about the work that I've done, the work that I'm doing. So currently at Citizens League, I would say a couple of things. So we recently wrapped up at the beginning of the year some work on census related stuff. So that was really fun to be able to just bring, host spaces where communities could come together and learn more about census and the importance of it. We're in the higher education space, and so the Office of Higher Ed through the state, they have been doing some they're calling it a Forward Together tour, where they're talking to communities, trying to reach this thing called an attainment goal that Minnesota has passed at the legislature. I won't get into the nitty-gritty details, but folks can look that up. And again, I'm always happy to answer questions about it. So we have had a partnership with them in that work, and that will continue in 2021. I think most notably right now, we just we're entering into a project with the city of St. Paul. And so this work, there's been some media around this, so folks can look it up. But the mayor's office, Mayor Carter, had announced recently a 48-member commission around community first public safety. And so we are the convener of that work. And essentially, again, you can pull up the press release around it, but we are the ones that the commission, and we're just convening it, but the commission is going to be looking at what they call priority 4 and priority 5 calls. These are your non-emergency 911 calls that are coming in, and they will be kind of reviewing those calls, understanding what other jurisdictions have done, and coming up with recommendations on maybe what other response models are out there for those types of calls, as opposed to a sworn officer responding. Like, what are some other ways that people can respond? So that work is currently happening and has been a pretty big lift for us. And then we are going to be venturing into some more public safety work with the Met Council. So that will be announced soon in the next coming weeks, I would say.
So a lot of big things, and I suppose the motivations to take on some of these issues probably stems in part from what's been going on in 2020, as there's a lot been happening and really bringing to, I guess, into focus, like what people are dealing with and what seems to be most important. So as we transition, and I'll share some maybe more personal stories as well as we get into 2020 and looking back at this year. But I'd like to know from you, think about this for just a second, what stands out the most. And as for me, when I think of 2020, the year, what stands out the most, and it ties into the George Floyd murder and everything that goes into that. But I remember those first couple nights where Minneapolis was on fire and thinking, how is this is happening here? What is going on here? That was I was frightened. I didn't know. I didn't know what to think of it and what would come of it. And I think as time has gone on, more and more good has come from it. But I still think that it exposed maybe some areas where there's more bad going on. And I don't know. So that image of 2020 for me, being from the Twin Cities area or Minnesota, and just seeing the images on TV of Minneapolis, and then it going throughout the nation, and I suppose in a few places in the world with protests, and then riots came out of that. I don't know. That's the image of 2020 that will stick with me. What about for you?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, yeah, I think I definitely share your concern. I think everybody, I don't know who didn't probably feel really nervous and anxious and scared, quite frankly, seeing that and seeing our community and certain places in the community be up in flames, literally. For me, through the tragedy of George Floyd's murder, I will say that having been out there in some of the demonstrations, I think oddly, like feeling this sense of like great community is actually what's going to be in my mind. And it sounds weird because there's so much pain, and there's so much trauma, and there's so much historical trauma that has to be, acknowledged even, and so much pain and trauma where healing is needed, I think. And we're in that stage where there has to be some kind of healing to reckon with our history and to move forward, I think. But to see the way that people are speaking up, that people are really fighting for justice, right? And fighting for racial justice in particular. That is like just empowering to me, and to see communities come together in that way, like that is really empowering to me personally. And it makes me more committed kind of every day for this work. So that's one thing that kind of sticks in my mind from that. But I really want to see, I think more of my doubt or kind of skepticism comes in as I look to 2021, not to get into that answer, or that question I know you're going to ask. I want to see people really, like all of the statements that have come out from organizations, like I want to see organizations really back that up with action. And so I think if we can continue the pressure, continue the conversations around, racial equity, what this means, how do we address the disparities that we have in this state? Like if we continue to have those, I think that's going to be critical. We need to continue to do that and actually address those things, and not just put out a statement and then call it a day, but continue to do this work every single day, right? And then the pandemic, I mean, I feel like that's like a whole hour / a whole day. It's been how many months? Like
Around about 10 of them, 9 or 10 months.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and so that too, like it's been a tough year. It's been a really tough year, I think, and I got to keep it real with that. Like it really has. I'm grateful for so many things. So for me, I'm still sitting in my gratitude, but also giving myself space to feel like how I feel in every moment, and every day is different. And some days are better than others. Some days I miss my people a lot. And then some days I'm able to, again, reflect on the things I'm grateful for, but it's really been a tough year. And so for me, the theme of this year has been really taking care of myself as radically as I can, just really making sure that I'm prioritizing me. Yeah.
Has there been a most difficult time or stretch of time for you personally, if you're willing to share, just in this year, trying to make sense of it all and stay motivated and be in a good mental space?
Yeah, I am happy to share. I feel like this month in particular has been probably the most challenging in many ways. And I know, what is it, the 21st? Just because of the cold, like I will say, getting out and being able to walk, and I'm a summer person, and the sun is literally something that like gives me life. It just gives me so much energy. And so not having the sun for like days on end, and it being kind of cold out and not really wanting to go outside to walk, like it has just been tough. And again, like I'm trying to kind of socially distance myself because I'll be seeing my family next week, which I'm really happy that I'm able to do that. I want to make sure that I am staying as safe as possible so that when I see them, I'm not worried about passing something on to them. So it's just been a little tough, I would say, with the cold really kind of coming in right now. And I really would love to be on a beach somewhere, to be honest.
And I don't know what to think about it still. I've been on, was it four vacations during the pandemic? I went with
Wow.
2 before I got sick, and then I've been on 2 since I've gotten COVID. So I feel a little bit better about that. But it's
Yeah.
still the space where I agree that we need to be very mindful of not carelessly doing the things that are going to make the pandemic spread more and more. And I think not
Mm-hmm.
enough people have subscribed to that theory. And perhaps even though I say that, maybe I haven't nearly as well as I should have. But I also think that depending on where you live, And we living
Yeah.
in the north where it's getting cold, like, I guess the timing of when the pandemic started with March and things starting to shut down. March was when it was starting to warm up. The sun was coming out more. So as we went into
Yeah.
summer, we could still distance ourselves from other people pretty well and like
Hmm.
be outside and enjoy that. But now, unless you're really hardcore into whatever physical activity that you do, you're probably not
Yeah.
outside that often.
No,
I was
I'm not.
I was on a beach very recently, and there was a lot of space
Oh my
on
gosh.
the beach, and I thought,
Nice.
you know, I was in Florida, and people do things differently in Florida, and you hear a lot about Florida. It's a pretty big state with a lot of open, warm spaces. So I think you can be out enjoying life pretty well there 12
Hmm.
months a year, and it's okay. And it's something we're realizing with the numbers going higher and higher with how many people are being affected. When you
Yeah.
try to take the outdoor activities that you can get away with during a pandemic indoors,
Yeah, it doesn't work so well.
well, so
Let's all move to Florida. I think that's the answer here.
maybe a few of us. Uh,
Yeah.
so I do recall that I'm assuming that you're at home, that you bought a house
Mhm.
this year. So I'd imagine that's been one of the positive things from 2020. Any other real good lessons learned that leave you thinking more positively heading in to 2021? Of course, as we're having this conversation,
Yeah.
it's still 2020 by the time anyone but you or I hears this or watches this. It will be 2021. So what's that
Yeah.
transitionary point there for you with things that are positive?
Yeah. Yes, I did buy a townhouse. Super excited. Again, I just feel really grateful that I'm in the position to be able to do that, especially during this time. Um, yeah, so bought a townhouse. It's been great, like adjusting to home ownership. I still can't believe that I have to pay this mortgage, but every month there's a reminder. So, but it's been good.
It probably keeps you motivated to not like quit your jobs and just go live on a
To
beach.
Florida. Yeah. Yeah.
Got to make some money here and there.
Yeah, exactly. Now I like have to. Yes. I'm just kidding. I've always had to, but I definitely have to now with this mortgage. But it's been really cool. I can't believe it sometimes. I just like stand in my living room and just take it in for a minute. So I'm just really grateful and happy about this new chapter in my life. For what I'm looking forward to going forward, I would say, and again, it ties to like the pandemic and stuff. I can't preface this enough and say like how just like grateful I am and feel lucky that I haven't gotten sick and just to be in the position that I'm in. I still have a job, all the things that I'm so like grateful for because I know not everybody else is in that position. But with that, I've just been much more intentional about my time and how I'm spending it and how I'm taking care of myself. And I think this year in particular, for so many people, I think it really was a time to do some deep reflection and assess like how are we living our lives? How are we, always, how am I? I'm always on, I was always like running to events every evening when the world wasn't kind of shut down, and it's given me a lot of time to really reflect on that and to really be thoughtful about how I want to continue to live my life going forward beyond this point.
Mhm.
So when we're able to be in spaces together again, um, just knowing for myself, like I look forward to kind of maintaining some of the routines that I put into place around my health, my exercising, sleeping. Um, and then really prioritizing like who I'm spending time with, how I'm spending time, and just being really true to myself and saying no when I don't want to do something and saying like hell yeah when I do want to do something. So I'm looking forward to that, like just understanding myself better, knowing what I need even more, and then not being afraid to act on that and to ask for that. So that's actually something that I'm looking forward to kind of deepening for myself in the next year.
2020 has been a great year to evaluate and reevaluate how we're doing things. And I don't think I've gotten good at that yet. But I do it a lot, and I really consider and reconsider what it is. Like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like That's something.
I ask myself that every day too. It's all good.
Here's the question. You moved. I'm not quite sure where you moved to, and you don't need to share that information, obviously. Do you still shop at Aldi, Amanda?
I don't shop at that Aldi.
Okay.
I definitely still shop at Aldi though. Those prices, you definitely cannot beat. But I have a recommendation for you, Kurt. So the one in Burnsville there that we both would shop at is good. No offense to that one. So if anybody from that store is listening, I'm not trying to be a hater. But the one in Shakopee is really good. Like that Aldi blew my mind. So you should check it out.
So I've got to open my mind that maybe the most conveniently located Aldi to my home isn't the one that I should be shopping at. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yes.
So I've told this story, I think, on a podcast a long time ago. It was with the first one I had with Brian Pyatt, who I wonder if you've met him. He does work with Care 11 and has been very vocal in the past year or so with some of the things that he's gone through. But I remember during that episode, I shared that I had met this person at Aldi, which I'm in a lot of places and I'm pretty outgoing in a lot of ways, but at the grocery store, I'd never made a friend, made an acquaintance, asked someone on a date, whatever I did with you back then. That was very new to me, but we met at the avocado aisle and so we're in sometime later, maybe 2 years later, not quite, we're talking today in the podcast.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. It was so random too. I just have to say to your audience that I never shop at Aldi at like whatever time. Was it 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that?
I usually go at about 11 a.m. or noon. Yeah, some time where I have odd hours, and you were there. I think it was a Monday or Tuesday, probably.
Yeah, so random. I had just gotten back from a trip and so was stocking up on groceries, and I again never go at that time. So it's just crazy how the universe like brings people, you meet people in the oddest of places. The avocado aisle, which
it's not really an aisle.
I'm happy about that. Yeah, or a little box, I guess. Yeah. That's funny.
So that's a couple years ago, and we met a couple times and stayed in touch since then. But I'm wondering now, Amanda, as we look to 2021, a few minutes left in the conversation with the time that we have for today, what are you really looking at? What are you looking to do? What's going to make you feel like 2020 and the lessons learned and the things that we've been through and things that we witnessed was all worth it? What needs to happen in 2021 as you think about your year?
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things. I think that's the issue I have too. Like there's so many things that I am excited about, looking forward to, and want to do. I would say just thinking about what we talked about in terms of kind of the racial kind of just social uprising that was happening around, the murder of George Floyd. And for me personally, I just want to continue to deepen my own work. We're doing things at our organization now, like organizational development stuff. We'll be diving into more of our own kind of work around the space. And so I'm just excited for me, and the commitment for me is to continue to like deepen my own racial equity work, to continue to learn and kind of check myself, dig into the subconscious beliefs and biases that I think we all hold and have, and really start to work on those things. And then continue to produce work that, is hopefully creating an impact in the world and is adding more benefit than harm. That's the ultimate goal that I have. Yeah. And then I will say on a personal note too, something a little more fun with my creative side. I am really into dance. And so I've been taking up some classical Indian dancing. So I'm really excited to improve my skills. Some of my dance moves are not really that great right now, but I'm trying. So I'm really excited for this year to continue taking classes and hopefully be able to do that in person at some point and just get better at my skills. So
enlighten me briefly. Is classical Indian dance something that you're able to practice by yourself more easily than maybe some other types of dancing that you might want to practice at some point?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, it is. So we do it over Zoom, and I have an instructor. Every Tuesday night we have our class, and so yes, you can practice. This specific style is called Kathak, and so there are many different forms of classical Indian dance in India, but this is one particular style, and so yeah, I can practice it on my own, and have been doing that, and so I just hope to get better every time. So we'll see.
And I don't want to open up too big of a topic here, but I think especially someone's listening only and they're not too familiar, your ties to India are very strong, even though you didn't grow up there. Can you just get into that for just a bit to explain that to someone that doesn't understand it?
Yeah, definitely. So my ancestors are from India, and through the British colonizing India, and then they created the indentured servitude system. They ended up abolishing slavery in many parts of the West Indies, and then specifically in Guyana, South America. They were still looking. They had control in Guyana, and were still looking for cheap labor. So they created this system, and they brought folks from India to many different parts of the West Indies. Guyana was one of those places, and so that is how my family ended up there. So it's been several generations now, and then, like I think I said in the beginning, me and then my siblings are the first generation to be born here in the States. But yeah, so that is our kind of ancestral lineage, is to India.
Yeah, I think a lot of people maybe know a lot about their ancestral history and how how you end up where you are today, and some people don't
Mm-hmm.
think about it much. But there are a couple direct lines of India to South America for your family, and then and you being here, and I guess how you see yourself in the world and the people around you. And going back to the prior lake topic, like that all is probably a very deep personal meaning for people, and it's something as a someone of European descent, white guy, where at this point in history, where in Europe I'm from, and I mean, I know, but it doesn't really matter. And I've been to a lot of these countries, and I don't have a
Yeah.
connection to any of it. I think that's something that the typical white person like me doesn't quite grasp, maybe with someone that's for means, not because their ancestors really wanted to do something, but
Mm-hmm.
because they were forced into or really didn't have any choice, kind of moving around the globe. I think that that's something that people maybe don't think about. That's probably touches someone to the core in ways that if you haven't experienced it, you can't quite know. And I don't think I know or understand at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really real. And I would say that's why these different identities for me are so important, because I think especially a lot of folks maybe who are also first generation to be born in the United States, and who maybe have a similar history and lineage, where I don't feel that connection to India, but it is a part of me, and it's a part, like, I am proud of who I am. And so I try and want to deepen that connection. And then my connection to Guyana is different. My parents were born there, but like you're always kind of told that you're not like Guyanese enough, that you're Americanized or whatever. So it's always this like struggle of figuring out like, where do you fit in? And then being, growing up in America, it was like, there were certain cultural things that were so not in my culture. We eat different foods, we have a different religion, our dialect is a little different. And so it was this constant, like, again, negotiation of like, where do I belong? And I think so many people have that experience now too, that we are creating that for ourselves, of what these dual and like multiple identities mean to us. But yeah, it is really a deeply, it's a very kind of deep feeling when I do think about it. And yeah, just with the history there.
And hearing your background just briefly on that, I hope that helps others just think about that differently, that topic, and your place in the globe and how you got there and why and how you fit.
Yeah.
Something like I don't think about that very often. One thing as I transition back out of that topic, for 2021, for me, I do see myself going away for a while once the pandemic is
Nice.
over, and going from country to country isn't going to be a big deal, and it won't be really putting anyone at harm, and just trying to figure out when I'm going to do that, how I'm going to do that. And
Where are you going to go? Yeah.
I don't know for sure. My idea is probably Asia, because it's pretty easy, I think, to go from country to country there. And I think that maybe that was a trip that you were returning from when we met that time, if I recall.
Yeah.
Southeast Asia. So I don't know.
Yep.
I want to go everywhere, and I don't know that it matters.
I do too.
So but knowing that, okay, I have been going around this country a little bit and will continue to a little bit, but really leaving the American borders. And also, like, you work day to day with people directly that need help of people like you working in a social work type of position. And I don't do that. My podcast has been a way for me to attempt to reach people and exchange ideas in a way that ideas that I found useful, and people that I've met and I know that are really doing things in a way that I want to share them with others. But my day-to-day work isn't so much like that. And I gotta realize, is the way I'm going about it, does it work for me, or do I need to dive in differently? So these are things that I need to figure out and am looking towards resolving in 2021, and hopefully the pandemic behind us, and I can move about the world in a way that's more effectively. And speaking more effectively, we'll finish up one final topic in the segment, the personal growth segment. Is there something that you've been doing recently or working on right now that you think you're learning and growing and doing something more and more effectively, that sharing that story with others might help them?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know that I have one story in particular, but I would say I've been just really doing kind of my own journey of like healing and, the self-work. I'm really into that stuff too. And I would say just listening to myself more. So I know people will say, some people believe in their intuition or whatever they call it. Some people don't, and that's totally fine too. I would say for me though, I think we all have had experiences where like our gut was saying something to us. We felt this in the pit of our stomach and we went against it and whatever happened, right? I've just noticed that like the more I'm listening to myself and really like being quiet enough to do that. So I've been doing a lot more meditation this year and plan to continue that going forward in my life. But it's given me a lot of just clarity and kind of silencing a lot of the noise that's just kind of around, right? Whether through devices or just kind of our minds kind of constantly being on. And when I've been doing that, it's helped me just, again, listen more clearly to what I need and what I want. And I think that's shown up for me in so many different ways where I've made decisions that just felt more aligned with that intuition. And once I made the decision, I felt really happy about it and I haven't doubted it. And the more I keep doing that, I think the more that it gets stronger for me to listen to myself. So that's something I would say. And that's how I've been able to do it, is through just more of that meditation and taking time to really unplug and just kind of be.
I think that's a perfect way to finish up this conversation. Just getting slightly better at knowing yourself and knowing what's going to bring you joy and fulfillment.
Yeah.
Eliminating some of the things that were taking up time and energy that were keeping you from that. And I think that is life. Maybe not the meaning of life, but that is the skill to life that we must all figure out how to use our time in a way that really leaves us feeling good about what we're doing and the people we're surrounding ourselves with.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, thank you, Amanda, for the conversation today. And
thank you for having me. This was great.
We can look back at 2021 and that we've actually followed through with the things that we're talking about. I know that can be a challenge, but I think it's people like you that really have this growth and learning and trying to give whatever you can back to the world that I like to surround myself with. So I appreciate you having a space in my life and doing this with me today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you too. I'm grateful for avocados and how we met, right?
I had one today. I'll have one tomorrow, I think, as well.
Yeah, they're good. So, but thank you so much. This was awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.